Let us come to God in prayer. Father, help us not only to glimpse something of the suffering that Jesus went through, but help us to learn to find glory in the cross, to understand more fully the meaning it has for us as believers and for all who come to its foot and kneel in prayer. Let your word come to us with all the assurance that your Spirit gives. Let your good news speak to the depths of our hearts. Reveal to us your power and wisdom and your great love for us and for the whole world through Jesus Christ, crucified for us. Amen.
A reading from Psalm 22. My God, why have you abandoned me? Why are you so far away from helping me, so far away from the words of my groaning? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. Also at night, but I find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. Our ancestors trusted you. They trusted, and you rescued them. They cried to you and were saved. They trusted you and were never disappointed. Yet I am a worm and not a man. I am scorned by humanity and despised by people. All who see me make fun of me. Insults pour from their mouths. They shake their heads and say, "Put yourself in the Lord's hands. Let the Lord save him. Let God rescue him, since he is pleased with him." Indeed, you are the one who brought me out of the womb, the one who made me feel safe at my mother's breasts. I was placed in your care from birth. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. So do not be so far away from me. Trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Many bulls have surrounded me. Strong bulls from Bashan have encircled me. They have opened their mouths to attack me like ferocious roaring lions. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It has melted within me. My strength is dried up like pieces of broken pottery. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me down in the dust of death. Dogs have surrounded me. A mob has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. People stare. They gloat over me. They divide my clothes among themselves. They throw dice for my clothing. Do not be so far away, O Lord. Come quickly to help me, O my strength. Rescue my soul from the sword, my life from vicious dogs. Save me from the mouth of the lion and from the horns of wild oxen. Amen.
A reading from Mark 15. They took Jesus to Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. They tried to give him wine mixed with a drug called myrrh, but he wouldn't take it. Next, they crucified him. Then they divided his clothes among themselves by throwing dice to see what each one would get. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. there was a notice written of accusation against him. It read, "The King of the Jews." They crucified 2 criminals with him, one on his right and the other on his left. Those who passed by insulted him. They shook their heads and said, "What a joke! You were going to tear down God's temple and build it again in 3 days. Come down from the cross and save yourself." The chief priests and the experts in Moses' teachings made fun of him among themselves in the same way. They said, "He saved others, but he can't save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe." Even those who were crucified with him were insulting him. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3:00, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you abandoned me?"
More verses from Psalm 22. You have answered me. I will tell my people about your name. I will praise you within the congregation. All the ends of the earth will remember and return to the Lord. All the families from all the nations will worship you, because the kingdom belongs to the Lord, and he rules the nations. There will be descendants who serve him, a generation that will be told about the Lord. They will tell people yet to be born about his righteousness, that he has finished it.
And from John 19. After this, when Jesus knew that everything was now finished, that the scriptures might be fulfilled, he said, "I'm thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was sitting there. So they fixed a sponge full of sour wine on a hyssop branch and held it up to his mouth. When Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." Then, bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. Amen.
Let us pray. God our Father, we ask that you would come to us all by your Holy Spirit, to me as I seek to speak about this, and to all of us as we listen and think about these things. Show us the glory in the cross, as well as the suffering. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Have you ever thought about the hymns and songs that Jesus knew? From childhood onwards, he would have known the Psalms as they were sung or chanted in the synagogue and in the temple, until they became a vital part of him. Beyond the set times of worship, they played a part in his life. On the last night of Jesus' earthly life, Jesus and his disciples are said to have sung a hymn before going to Gethsemane, probably the Psalms known as the Great Hallel, sung by the Jewish people before Passover to celebrate God's rescue of them from Egypt. And the last of these Psalms, Psalm 118, ends in this way. And Jesus would have sung these words as he went on the way to the cross. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. The New Testament scholar Tom Wright describes Jewish people singing the Psalms. They don't sing the Psalms as British people tend to do, bolt upright, singing with their hymn book in front of them. But their whole body feels the Psalms in all their ancient rhythms. And we think that would have been the same for Jesus. Have you ever thought about the content of Jesus' songbook? The Psalms range widely in their worship of God, from exultant praise to deep, disorientating grief. About 1/3 of the Psalms are songs of lament, both of individuals and of the community of faith. So it's not surprising that Mark's Gospel tells of Jesus using the words of an ancient psalm, Psalm 22, as he hangs on the cross. He uses these words, my God, why have you abandoned me? But Jesus is not just quoting from the psalm. He's living every tortured syllable of it as he dies in agony. And that suffering goes beyond the unbearable pain of his body. It goes right into the heart of his relationship with the Father. Let's look briefly at that ancient psalm. First of all, it's a prayer. It's a prayer of faith in God. And that prayer is addressed not just to God, not just to the God who's out there, but it's addressed to my God. And the God that faith is based on, as with all prayers of faith, is a God of grace who's reached out in love and drawn a people into real relationship with their God. And the underlying assumption is that this is a God who's said to be faithful to the covenant with his people forever. Our ancestors trusted you. They trusted and you rescued them. They cried to you and were saved. They trusted you and were never disappointed. What's more, it's been his personal experience as well. I was placed in your care from birth. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. But in the original context of the psalm, which may be all the persecutions that David suffered from Saul, that hope seems very distant and God seems very far away. And so the poet prays, don't be so far away from me. Trouble is near and there's no one to help. The psalmist is ostracized. He's mocked. He's helpless and surrounded by evil people who are envisaged as animals. It's not only a prayer of faith in God, even though God seems far away. It's a heartfelt experience of suffering. Whatever else this psalm is, this man really knew what suffering was. And I believe there is something else in the psalm, which I'll come to later. But we mustn't forget that the people of God used this psalm in times of trouble and can still use it and the other psalms of lament with it. I've been reading an article by the American pastor Rick Warren. It's in last month's Plough magazine. And he says, worship isn't always celebration, praise and thanksgiving. expressing every aspect of grief, shock, sorrow, struggle, surrender, can bring you closer to God too. Let me give you a little context to that article. This is what Warren says, and he's talking from bitter personal experience. Bitter personal experience that's been transformed by the grace of God in Jesus Christ. 10 years ago, my youngest son, who'd struggled since childhood with mental illness, took his life in a moment of deep depression. It was the worst day of my life. My wife, Kay, and I and our other children were devastated. I've never felt such suffocating and paralyzing pain. What saved my sanity in the following months was spending hours and even days alone with God in worship, pouring out all my jumbled emotions. I used my pain to draw closer to God. What I learned was that we draw closer to God by telling him exactly how we feel, not by telling him what we think he wants us to feel. God wants the real, not the ideal from you. In pain, you cry out. You argue with God. You complain to God. You express all the negative emotions you're feeling. You don't suppress them. You confess them. Complaining to God when you're in pain is a biblical act of worship. And so I say to you, don't ever be afraid to tell God exactly how you're feeling, even if you're afraid that you'll say the wrong thing. If you're afraid that, unlike Jesus, you'll commit sin in doing so. I want you to remember God's verdict on Job. Job, who said exactly what he felt, and in the end was vindicated by God when God finally appears at the end of the drama. This psalm is a heartfelt experience of suffering, but it's also a psalm full of prophetic insight. It's the psalm that the gospel writers used most often in the accounts of Jesus' death. And it's not only because Jesus used words from it, it's also because it mirrors his situation as well. It mirrors it so well. In the dividing of his clothing by the executioners, in the mocking and the shaking of the heads by those who should have known better, and probably more that they don't mention explicitly. And it's true for the rest of the New Testament as well. In 1 Peter chapter 1, Peter tries to explain what's happening. The prophets, he says, wondered what the Spirit of Christ within them was saying when he bore witness beforehand about the suffering that would happen to the Anointed One and the glory that would follow. Jesus had a deeper experience of suffering than David did. David's experience is what many people experience when God seems to have hidden his face for a while. But he also had insight into the experience of the Messiah. Christians often say that Jesus endured the darkness of dereliction. He endured being abandoned by God. And Tom Wright says about Jesus' words, "Why have you abandoned me?" The gospel writer doesn't intend us to think in a comforting sort of way, "Oh, that was all right. You see, it only felt like that." Actually, God was carrying him through. Part of the whole point of the cross is that there the weight of the world's evil really did converge on Jesus, blotting out the sunlight of God's love, as surely as the light of day was blotted out for 3 hours. Jesus' words don't mean that his Father ceased to love him, especially when he was carrying out God's will. He said in the garden, "Not my will, but yours be done." And he'd always done what God wanted him to do as a perfect son. But it does mean that Jesus endured this darkness for us, the same outer darkness that he often uses in his parables as a picture of God's final judgment on sin. Jesus drank the cup of God's judgment on sin on our behalf, and he drank it willingly. What can we be sure of when we come to the foot of the cross? We can be sure of the dreadful nature of sin if God went to such lengths to bear it away in Christ. We can be sure of God's love for us for exactly the same reason. And if we humble ourselves at the cross in simple, trusting faith, admitting that sin has a grip on us as well, and relying on God's mercy, all our guilty stains will be gone, and we will find peace with God. In just a few days' time, we'll be running an Alpha course. What date is it, Bill? On the 19th of April. And if you want to find more out about that, then I do recommend Alpha to you. Let's pray. Father, you know our hearts, and we thank you for your holiness, which cannot tolerate any sin, and for your great love for us, which cannot tolerate any barrier between us. And we thank you that in the cross of Jesus, both your holiness and your love came together, and the result is grace that pours out towards anyone who will receive it. Your free, undeserved favor in Jesus Christ, our Lord. Help us to receive it, to enter into that experience. Amen. Our next song is "Worthy is the Lamb." Let us pray. Merciful God, we thank you that you created all people and you love them although they may not know it. Have mercy on those who don't yet know you. We think of our friends. We think of the people in Penicuik. And we pray that you would reveal yourself to them in Jesus. May your gospel be given with grace and power to those who haven't heard it. Use us. Use us by the power of your Spirit to do that. Turn the hearts of those who resist you and bring home those who have gone astray. Fill us with your Holy Spirit and make us usable and useful in the service of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Our final song is Here is Love Vast as the Ocean, and it's got an extra chorus or refrain in it. You'll pick it up as you go along. Go in peace. May Jesus Christ, who for our sake became obedient even to the point of death, and even to death on a cross, may he keep you and strengthen you. And may the blessing of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit rest upon you and remain with you this night and forever. Amen.